Richard, over to you.
Thank you for that lovely introduction to Yadmila. That's brilliant. So I'm going to ask that everybody sits back, or grab your popcorn, make sure you're on mute, and then let's begin. I would say let's begin, but I think my mouse has to work first. Isn't that wonderful? Just the joys of technology. You know what? I'll cheat. Okay, give me a quick show of hands. Who here is self-employed? Yeah, fantastic. Running your own business, as we all know, isn't easy. It's all the extra stuff to do with things like sales and marketing and social media and accounts that can take sometimes far longer and far much more time than our actual businesses do. Most of us don't work 9 to 5. We work whenever the time is right, and we even work extra invisibly in our own thoughts. The greatest skill of both time management and work-life balance can be summed up in a single word: effectiveness. People go on about work-life balance, a phrase that we all know, but what does it actually mean? Is work not part of life? Does life not somehow stop when we're at work? Calling it a balance, doesn't it make it sound more like really hardcore and challenging and more like a tightrope to be walked and not simply a more regulated way of life? The truth is that there's no such thing. We're actually always talking about work-life effectiveness. Back in 2020, as Yadmila mentioned, I wrote a book on time management and effectiveness to help people to get more out of life. Not to cram more in, but instead to free up time for what matters most. And I've always lived and breathed that philosophy. For example, to be able to dedicate as much time as possible to my daughters in their early years, while also managing to work for myself and pay all the bills and share so many experiences with those that meant the most. And if you ever hear somebody say, "That's time I'll never get back," here's a tip for them: you never get any of it back. So remember, making it count is an art form. But with the world being turned upside down in 2020, we could see people who really started to wobble, not knowing how to deal with change. After all, just a few years before, who ever imagined that with so many people being paid not to go to work, or that would be told off if you didn't go into a bank wearing a mask? The world has gone crazy, and there's no more normal. Going for a Zoom used to mean a quick nip to the shops. Then suddenly it became a program everyone had, and Zooming someone became an expression. Now people don't associate it with fast cars or Stevie Wonder, or perhaps both together, but instead with video calling. But make no mistake, I love video meetings. I love networking on video. No travel, saving time, no fuel costs, and it even helps the planet too. So what's not to like, unless you're a grabby kind of person? For most careers, there's almost nothing we can't do remotely, unless you're a heart surgeon or perhaps a handsy MP. But for many, it's been even more challenging over these last 18 months. Apart from the obvious life changes, health risks, and the other concerns with loved ones, business owners have had to work remotely. And as a friend said 2 decades ago, if you want to be more effective, study your distractions. Working from home was set up, we set up our environment as best as we can, recreating our own personal little sanctuary to focus in theory. But for the first few months of lockdown, it was kind of good with little disruptions on the doorstep, but there were gradually more and more calls and texts and social media messages. You know exactly what I mean. Working from home in a busy household meant juggling the needs of family members, dogs, cats, lawns to mow, washing to do, you name it. But that simple problem just got bigger. It was enough to make anyone swear. And I'm not talking about the C word, COVID. I'm talking about the F word, the one that causes so much frustration and arguments. In fact, I'd go so far as to say it's the most important F word in the business productivity dictionary: focus. But to get focused, you need the right setting. Did you know that studies have shown it takes around 24 minutes to regain focus after a distraction? And depending on what you focused on, It can vary from a few minutes if you're lucky to several hours. So someone bringing you a nice cup of tea may have not so nice a cost to your business. But back in 2010, I interviewed representatives from HSBC, PwC, and others, with a mixture of people who had the balance right and who are highly effective in both work and non-work, and those of whom had a seesaw that was tipped firmly towards one or the other or neither, setting the balance completely off. After processing all of those interviews and collecting all the data, looking for common traits and core principles, I developed this universal formula for effective work-life balance, which I continue to refine and keep up to date with our ever-changing world. And it takes most of the day to go through it, as we said. So I'm going to really focus on two of the most fundamental ingredients that can either make or break work-life balance. People interviewed, as I said, either had it right or they didn't. There was no real in between. And those that had it right shared certain traits, and those that had it wrong broke lots of rules. But these two key ingredients, the first one is yin, yang, oil, water. The more you can separate those two worlds of work and non-work, the more effective your brain can be. Your brain's always on, well, I hope. So compartmentalization is key. Besides, it sends clear messages to others, whether you're on or off duty. Work-life balance shares that same 24 hours. So we're not effective if we've got our foot on the accelerator and the brake at once. So use rituals to support those boundaries so you're clear with yourself as well as others which zone you're in. All the best people did. And the more you focus, the more productive you are, and the more everything just flows. And that second essential ingredient is for your boss and your partner to be really supportive. So those that you cohabit with and those that you actually interact with in the workplace. If your co-workers don't trust you, you're either pressured to go above and beyond to try to prove yourself, or you're going to be disillusioned. Similarly, if your partner isn't supportive of your need to focus, your ability to be productive will be highly impaired. Back in 2010, there was a big focus on office presenteeism, but one of the good things that's come out of the last 18 months is that this has started to become less prevalent. And so hopefully positive changes ahead. Just because somebody is there in body doesn't mean that they're there in mind, making them effective, but instead they can really be a distraction to others. So don't value presenteeism because it's not necessarily the key. That's more on results. But could you imagine if you were trying to climb Mount Everest and your boss or partner came up and tried to call you back to base camp for some sandwiches? If it keeps happening, you'll never get to the summit, being pulled back down like a yo-yo. But do they realize that what they're really saying is that they believe that their interruption is more important than anything that you could possibly be doing? Forget losing your focus or losing your balance. It's enough to make many people lose their cool. So how do you convey that message to someone who thinks that their interruptions are justified, irrespective of the impact to your productivity? If they understand why you're working and truly respect and support your goals, imagine how much quicker you could finish, or just imagine how much more productive you could be. It's about setting life on your terms with respect for the lives of others. Swings and roundabouts, but it doesn't have to be complex. And don't panic, wobbles are inevitable. It's all about how we deal with them. Flexibility and focus, resilience, respect, and being realistic. That universal formula for work-life balance has many elements, and with the right mindsets, the right tools, and the right environment, it can help you to make it a more rewarding way of life. Over to you. Any questions?